Miller's tank. And between the two of them, they evolved these beautiful designs, which we'll see in the other building. And sounds nice things about me. I grew up in the, let's see, in the teens with the Marchese brothers. If you're a good Dago, in Milwaukee it's Marchese, not Marchese. And they didn't correct me, somebody else did. The fellow who used to race against corrected me. Anyway, they were, I think, ran Miller's longer at Indianapolis than anybody. They ran the straight eight, really was a 2-liter Miller, 122 cubic inches, you know, and they poured them out a little bit, but not much supercharged, and still a small engine running against a 270 Offie. So as late as 1947, they ran that straight 8 Miller. Then they went to the 270, and that's, you'll see this car over here, the white one. I learned a long time ago, if I'm going too long, we'll shut me off, but I learned a long time ago from the outlaws, the IMCA, don't give anybody any cubic inches if you can avoid it. And they bored all the engines out to got them up over 300 cubic inches, and ran them in a little sprint car like this. So we'll start here. This is an outlaw car. 3A always ran 220 cubic inches, you know, and this is 268, and is a Dreyer, Floyd Dreyer, probably one of our greatest independents. Indianapolis. He built his own engines after a while, and but this was the Miller, bored out and lengthened with different blocks to get 268 cubic inches out of it. A lot of cubic displacement and an awful lot of horsepower in a little sprint car. Forerunner of the Indianapolis Offie. That's a really interesting thing about it. Twin overhead cam, obviously, and you're welcome to go over the, you know, you want to go over the ropes and.
That was not an 8 cut in half, was it?
No, it's not an 8 cut in half. No. You'll see those.
Yeah.
But this was originally was Harry Miller's 151 Miller Marine, where they raced it in a hydroplane, and that was the basic 4-cylinder engine. And then they elongated it, and you know, made the different crankshafts and different block and different crankcase and everything. But it's an 8-valve. See, and they learned shortly after that it's better to go 4 valves per cylinder, lighter reciprocating parts, and I guess they got better breathing. The next car ran at Milwaukee a lot, and it was a regular 3A Tony Willman, Milwaukee's Tony Willman. Drove it and owned it, and before that, a farmer from Omaha, Bagley, and they actually made a living running this car and another one, a McDowell. Are you recording me?
Yeah.
Good.
No shorthand.
Miller Schofield was, when Harry Miller went bankrupt in 1932, he sold out to Schofield, and then they had made a head for a Model B block, and found out, you know, that 3 main bearings, when they turned that tight, wasn't practical. So then they went to a 5 main bearing block, but still with a detachable head. And it's 95% Miller, and then Dreyer and others made the 5 main bearing block. When they got all, when they
Miller have a detachable head?
No, Miller never did. Well, I don't remember that he ever did. You'll see other ones know. They used the monoblock, but this originated, see, from a Model B Ford, poor man's sprint car, and and they ran 10, 15, and 25-mile races because they'd run them so hard and wind them so tight they'd actually elongate the crankshaft. I've seen them where they pushed the casting out in front, broke the casting. Wow. So much pressure lengthwise. Any questions? Or all this car has one wonderful thing about its history. At least I think so. The fellow that worked for Dreyer was named Joe Silnes. He was a Norwegian and came from the fjords of Norway, and told me that he worked one winter on a whaling ship up in the Arctic, and he said that was enough for me. And then came to America and learned the metal beating from Floyd Dreyer, and he built this car in 1932 or 3, and this is the replica, and he built the replica of 6 years ago. Isn't that interesting?
Wow. What, is he still around?
No, died. A perfectly wonderful man. He'd stand there with a ball-peen hammer like this and say, "Tell me how you want it, Dave." Jeez, he also built this Duesenberg body here. This is we honestly call it the Indy winner, and I tell everybody, look, if it isn't the Indy winner, show me where the Indy winner is. This was Joe Boyers and L.L. Coram in 19 I got to get my dates now. 24 when they won Indy. Then Peter DiPaolo won in 25, and it's a 122 Miller, a 122 Duesenberg. Pardon me. And somebody could do this for me. You could go in there and open the hood, and the first car in Indianapolis that had a supercharger. They were the great innovators.
Oh, that's cool.
You know, I can tell you how to win friends and influence people. See, some of my business friends, looked at that, and I said, "What everybody needs to prod you and spur you on a little bit is a damn good competitor." See? They said, "Yeah."
And here, little Dave.
Lift it up. Lift it up. It'll lift up.
Wow.
But that's Harry Miller's big competitor, and he beat Miller 3 times in the 20s, 24, 25, and 27. And they took the same chassis and we put a 1.5 liter engine in it when we changed the formula in 19.
What, the little caps, is that how you adjusted the valves?
Yes. Well,
did they have buckets or what?
I'll tell you what, they really had to set them when they set the engine up. You don't get any adjustment to speak of there. That's a blower right there, the sidewinder. See?
Dave, what did the red line this thing at?
Oh gosh, 6,500.
Well, why don't they have any indication on attack at all of a red line?
No.
They just run them out?
Yeah.
Just run it until it won't go anymore.
That's right.
Isn't that the way you run race
Sure,
cars?
sure. Next in line is one of the great American companies, the people from Trenton, New Jersey. My memory is not as good. It'll come to me in a minute. They built the cables for the Brooklyn Bridge. Rebling. Help me out when I.
Rebling, yeah.
Fine. The Rebling family. And you know what? They built the cables for the Brooklyn Bridge. Then they built the Mercer automobile. starting in 1910. And this is the first American car to win a Grand Prix race. Otherwise, before that was always Mercedes and Audi Union, Mercedes and not Audi, Mercedes and
Not Porsche.
Fiat and Delage and guess that was about it. Mercedes. And Eddie Pullen beat him at Santa Monica, California in 1914. February 1914. Oh, huge monster engine, 450 cubic inches. If somebody would like to, you can open the hood. I just want to make you comfortable. You've come a long ways. And
Steer them? I mean, the wheel's way over here. They actually.
yeah, sure. You just drop it, those straps. We'll put it back later on.
Is that for a speedometer?
That's
or-
for a speedometer, yes.
Is this restored, Dave, about the way it looked day one when they went out into the track? For the
Yes,
first
sure.
time? It's a T-head, isn't it?
You bet.
Tell us what a T-head is. A valve on either side.
We got our first prize with it at Pebble Beach in the racing division. 450 cubic inches. That's a T-head engine, you see.
Yeah.
Then they got smart. Peugeot taught us about overhead cams and hemispherical combustion chamber.
This would have a cam on both sides?
Yes, not this one, but this is the last gasp of the big four-cylinder T-head engine. They had two camshafts in this engine, one to operate the exhaust, the intake on that side, and the exhaust on this side.
And they were in the block, right? They were in the block?
No, they were in the crankcase.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's fair to say that car, that's the only one I have ever seen anywhere in the United States or anywhere, and this one also. Oh, George Wingard has a mate to this car in Eugene, Oregon.
Dave, is this to build up fuel pressure or to maintain it?
Well, maintain it. The riding mechanic, that was his job. As soon as he saw that he didn't give pressure to push the gas to the carburetor away.
How fast will this car go?
100.
Really?
Plus, it's more than I want to try to drive it. It has a terrific engine for the size of the car and the weight.
What does this do?
It's a speedometer.
That's the speedometer, sure.
Is that why?
I guess I take that back. I would.
Like they needed to know.
They used that system for a long time until they developed a better way of doing it. Now, I'm really a Model A lover and a Model A admirer and a Model A nut. This is a hot rod Model A, which is what would have been done in the middle 30s, and we built it about 10 years ago. Has a Riley head in it, with two carburetors, one valve overhead. We have some fun with the Bugatti and the Alfa and the foreign car, the Bentleys and all the rest. The Model A is quick, is plenty quick, and has hydraulic brakes, a V8 transmission with a pretty close ratio between second and third. You know what I mean by that? The second gear is almost the same ratio as third gear. So typical road racing, when you come out of a corner and you come a little slower than, and you drop it into second, and you haven't lost all those RPM. And when you come out, you're almost at the same RPM, almost at higher RPM.
Is that a special axle to drop front axle?
Yes, yeah, sure. You bet.
Yeah, they used to sell those.
It's my idea of what a hot rod would have been like in the middle 30s.
Yeah, right.
It looks, the whole cowl looks lower, the headlights.
Yes, sure.
It's
It is.
shortened or lowered.
Did you see cars like this, Dave, when you were a kid in the 30s? Did you see people modifying cars like this?
Well, no, not really, but I saw Alphas and Bugattis that were lower and had very nice
Yeah. So,
chassis and.
yeah.
They used to sell those axles.
Did they?
Pardon me?
They used to sell those axles, the drop axle.
Sure.
Beautiful car. What year is it?
Oh, it's about 1935, 36. But mostly Model A from 30 and 31.
I think 35 they had a suicide door, didn't they?
A little later.
It was later than 35?
Yes. About, I think 30, no, you're right, 34, 35.
That's what I was
Ford.
Mm-hmm.
The Victoria Ford or had the suicide doors.
Yeah. So this must be an earlier body then, is that right?
Oh, that's a roadster body, just altered a lot. We really should take that cover off the back. We just.
Oh, boy.
Oh, you know. Nothing new under the sun. We copied that from a stuffed bear cat.
That's cool.
It's meant to be kind of a joke, you know. It's meant to be what would have been done if we'd applied all of those ideas in the middle 30s. We've never shown it, which I want to do sometime, because I think the hot rodders are a wonderful bunch, you know, and they do a lot of things differently, but I think this is something they haven't thought of.
Yeah, they want to stick a big V8 engine in a car
Yes,
right
you
away.
bet. You want to see the engine? Sure. Sure. Now, will you hold my cane?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's overhead valve head.
Well, yes. Riley. See, it's like a Jeep. One valve is overhead and the other is inlet. They use the same Model A block. And push rods for the gas intake side.
And then the block, the valve head for the exhaust.
Yep.
See, it's
Yes. Riley built carburetors then for the Offie engines, you know.
Are those Randall carburetors?
No, those are Ford. Those are Ford.
The V8s.
Yes. What was the one just before the 97? Was the 81, wasn't it? I can't remember either. Just before the '97 Ford carburetors, and this thing will go. Now, I'm a big admirer of Maserati. You know, Wilbur Shaw won Indy twice with an 8-cylinder Maserati in 1939 and 40, and they built these cars in the starting in the early '70s. Well, they built a different model. A couple of different models just before this one, but this one was about 1970, 71. They named it a Bora. Everybody getting pretty cold? We ready to move on to?
Do you have any iced tea?
The Marchese brothers Indianapolis car, the championship car. Fascinatingly interesting car to me because it's really one of the last examples of the independent, team fellows that didn't have corporate backing. Very first car with a tubular frame, and Tootie, the youngest Marchese. This is one of the first, very first car with a tubular frame, and Tootie, the youngest Marchese, was a very, very good gas welder. Has a 270 Offie engine, and originally had their Miller. Straight 8 Miller. They never won Indy with it, but they got a 4th and a 7th and an 11th, which is a pretty good record for A1 car. Nowadays, they have a new car every year, and I never can understand how they can improve them that much, but they do. And in this day, this car first appeared in 1937. They had the radiators on the side, which they were first to do that.
That's an oil cooler, are there?
Not it's an oil cooler now. Any questions? I'll try to answer them.
They were down on 2nd Street with their shop, weren't they?
They were on 2nd Street.
And
I went to the University of Marchese, and they had 2 campuses, one on 17th and Forest Home, and one on South 2nd Street.
I used to see those guys as a kid in the 50s. They were still wrenching on cars.
Sure.
But they had one on 17th and Forest Home also?
Yes, they had a garage there, too.
Really? Wow, I never knew that.
Carl Marchese drove a Porsche in 1958, and his brother Tootie did too.
Really?
Tootie.
Yeah.
Wow.
They brought their cars into Baumgartner Motors. They bought them from Ted Baumgartner.
Yes.
And they had 1958 Porsche 356 Wow.
Wow.
This is when racing was fun.
This is when racing was fun. They had a terrific accident at Syracuse with this car. This is kind of interesting history. There are the pictures there up on the walls, and not the big black car, but the white one was wrapped up like a ball. And Carl said that a mile track of Syracuse, he said, he walked down and here's Chuck Stevenson, who was the driver, walking up the side of the track like that without a scratch on him with that wreck. He said that was the happiest moment of my life because the fellow didn't get hurt. But that really marked sort of the end of the individual race car owners, builders. and things turned into a corporate effort where they had corporate backing, and they'd have 4 or 5 engines,
Tons of money.
tons of money. They were great innovators. They had a 2-speed axle in here, so that they had a better ratio for qualifying.
Could they change it right from? Could they change it right from?
Right from the cockpit, sure. The rules said you couldn't change it. Let me see now. The rules said you had to stick with what you qualified with.
Oh.
But they forgot to say if you had the gear ratio right in the car without having to actually change the gears. Just pull a lever.
A loophole.
A loophole. Just exactly what it was. Our racing engine collect. I say I always been such an admirer of the people that took the 4-cylinder Model A and Model B, particularly the Model B block of 1932, and then they built these wonderful cylinder heads, and that's a Frontenac over there. No, the first one.
Over here.
Well, that's a Fronty too. That's a Model T Fronty though. Okay. But this one on way on the left there is a stagger valve Fronty, which is very interesting because it's intake, exhaust, intake, exhaust, intake, exhaust, and they claim that they got better turbulence and better mixing of the fuel.
Now, those are back from the 20s, aren't they?
30s.
30s.
30s with it. And then next to it is really a Miller. Then a Model T, and that was, the Chevrolet brothers, the Frontenac.
Oh, were they?
Gaston Chevrolet and Louis Chevrolet and Art Chevrolet.
They made that head.
They made that hit.
78 horsepower more than the original Model T.
Sure.
20.
Sure. And then the Ford D8. Cute story. Can you stand a cute story on that? Offenhauser then sold out to Meyer and Drake, and Dale Drake really was more of a farmer than anything else. But Louis Meyer was the 3-time winner, and they built these V8s with the Ford Motor Company, and Ford Motor Company built it, and won Indy with them. And then along came Bobby Unser in 1968 with a 4-cylinder Offie and a turbo, supercharged, but with the wastegate, where they kept the blower going all the time, and then instead of losing the RPM on the instead of being connected to the engine and then coming into the corner to drop the RPM real far, and then you don't get the horsepower. Then coming out of the turn, they wouldn't get full horsepower till they were halfway down the straightaway, and that don't give anybody anything. There you go. So then they finally developed the wastegate, and just kept the blower going. See, the turbocharged at high RPM, and open the wastegate and run it in the air like this, and then when they wanted to get full power, they closed the wastegate and they had full power right away. And this little 30-man organization developed that and beat the Ford Motor Company. And Dale Drake was here like that, and I said, I gotta congratulate you. You beat the Ford Motor Company. And this farmer, with a great deal of humility, I like that. And he looked at me and he said, we only won that big race. I said, yeah, but you won the big one.
Yeah.
And And he looked at me, he said, well, he said, you want me to tell you what we really did? I said, sure. You know, he said, we made him spend a hell of a lot of money. You can't, that's wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, that's about it over here. Now we'll,
How about this one, Dave?
oh, that's sure. Marchese's original sprint car. They had a radio head on it, which is overhead valve, built by Joe Jagelsberger from Racine. And then they heard about Gallivan with an overhead cam head for a Model T Ford. And they went down to Rantoul, Illinois, where Gallivan was the Air Force instructor at Chanute Field, and bought the first head from him, came back here, and set it on there, took their old head off, and put it on, and Carl went out and set the track record the next day, and won the race, too. And he said, we timed it like this, and we knew that something was wrong, and we just hear this little click, click, and that was the piston hitting the valves, the way they had it timed. And he said, we knew that wasn't right, and so after they won the race, they came back and changed it, and he said, you know what? He said, never ran as fast again.
I collect, they're believers in the Saints also.
Pardon me?
They were believers in the Saints, the Marchese brothers. I see they have a St. Christopher medal
You
on
bet.
that car and on that car's dash.
You bet.
So they were riding with the Saints occasionally,
Sure.
too.
And now.
Can you talk about their machine shop? You got some of their tools back there, don't you?
Oh gosh, we went by that. Some of their tools. More important is back in that corner. Is a 1910 Cincinnati milling machine, and the old-fashioned slow RPM and Tutti Marchese made their crankshaft, their connecting rods, and everything on that old mill. Today, if you did it today, you'd go broke in a week. Slow RPM, but they did that beautiful work, and much to their credit. Then which I don't have here is one of their midgets, but right before the war and right after the war, when midget racing was so popular, they ran 4 different cars 7 nights a week. I mean, now that's really something. And they ran St. Louis, Toledo, Detroit, Soldiers Field, Chicago, and Milwaukee here. And I guess I missed one, but 7.
Raceway Park. Raceway Park,
Yeah.
Blue Island.
Sure, there you go.
How many cars did the Marchese brothers build in their career?
How many cars
Yeah.
in their whole lifetime? I just have to guess. I'd say maybe 15. Oh, their midgets were incredibly successful when I can remember going to the Coliseum. We got anybody old enough here to remember the Coliseum? They ran midget races at State Fair Park in the wintertime, and they ran outboard, Altos and Evinrude outboards, and by the time they ran 2 laps, like that was so smoked up so much you couldn't see across the track.
Zimdar's raised his hand. He remembers that. I only
Sure,
remember the quarter
sure.
mile
My father
track.
took me to the Coliseum for the
Pardon me?
race. My father took me to the Coliseum as a little kid.
Sure.
And my eyes would water so much I couldn't see.
I know it.
They did that.
Imagine if you tried to do that today.
They did that in Chicago at the Armory also.
Sure. Sure.
What's that little car in the corner? You didn't
Oh, well,
mention anything.
that's an earlier Gallivan. That's a single cam Gallivan. Model T block. Carl drove that car in a 100-mile race here, and he was leading the race at 90 miles, and all of a sudden oil went all over everywhere. I said, well, what happened? Well, he said, we were running the oil pump at engine speed instead of half engine speed. I said, what did you do that for? He said, listen here, wise guy. He said, we were kids. We didn't know any better. Isn't that a wonderful answer? They were remarkable people, and they were looked upon by the trade as very, very competent. That's a Cincinnati mill way back in the corner there.
They ran a trucking business, didn't they, Dave?
The older brothers did.
Oh, okay.
The older brothers, Joe and Joe ran the trucking business.
Okay.
And with a mud floor on South 2nd Street. And the cute story.
Yeah.
Bagley, the fellow with that orange car from Omaha, was very successful with that. And Carl and Tootie were so meticulous. They'd lay everything out in the newspaper and absolutely clean. Bagley would come here and race. Found a nice boat out near Nagawicca, and never been able to find out who built it, or never been able to find out anything about it. But the engine was not in the boat when we got it. The engine we found later, it's a Termont and Monahan from Oshkosh, and we were able to get some literature on the thing. Built in 1904, 1.5 horsepower, 2-cycle, obviously. We had it in the lake this summer, and we fiberglassed the lower part of the hull like that because we can't wait for a week for the thing to swell up. So this way we can in and out, and we don't. Works fine. Why don't we start over here? The motorcycles. Some of them were found by accident, But the one we so interested in, that's a 1907 Harley. Came from a farm at Sun Prairie. That's a 2-cycle Austrian machine called a Puch, and they were especially good at 2-cycle design of 2-cycle engines. And Sears Roebuck liked it so much that they took the name on it and sold them in 1962 and 3 and 4. And an Indian to compete with a Harley. A 1902 Stearns, which is only interesting because it's related and forerunner to our Jeeps. After Stearns, he was a prominent builder in Cleveland at the time of Henry Ford and Alexander Winton, and then they finally got to be a Stearns Knight and then Willie's Knight, and then on down the line till we have our Jeeps. Stretching the imagination a little bit, but it was related and followed that whole line. A 1912 Mercer, built again by the Rebling people in Trenton, New Jersey. And I think had quite a good racing record. They never won Indy, but they ran there a couple of times. And they were So this I think is quite good looking. They were the hot dog car of competitor with the Stutz Bearcat. It for 1912, I think it probably runs and handles better than any of these other old cars. We had one car, a couple of them. We had one car called a Frontenac, no relation to the engine build, and it was beautifully built, big and heavy. It was the clumsiest, awkward, miserable, nothing. You're not surprised at why they went out of business. They just weren't any good.
Same vintage as this, same year?
Yes, a little older. It was 1909, but I'm just eulogizing these people because their design of the steering knuckle, for example, handles nice. Transmission shifts nice. The brakes are terrible, but everything else was pretty good.
You think that the fact that they built race cars had some influence?
Sure, you bet. Or anyway, the effort to do things well stimulated them.
Yeah.
1907 Locomobile, one of America's great cars. You fellas can remember. Some of you fellas can remember Locomobile. They lasted till 1928, I think.
Who bought them out there? Or who did they go bankrupt? Or?
They went bankrupt, I believe. Very, very quality builder.
Where were they built? What city?
Bridgeport, Connecticut, I think.
Craftsmanship on the top and everything is just.
Pardon me?
The craftsmanship. I mean, of
Yeah.
all the brass and
Sure.
the top, and it's just gorgeous. Wow.
Well,
Dave, I can see why they call this car the brass era. Brass edging on the running board.
sure.
The horn is brass.
You know what else? The crankcase is bronze, and so is the transmission.
When did the brass era cars? When did they run from and to? What years? Any idea?
When did they run what?
What was the brass era? When did it start and stop?
Oh, well, when they first came out with cars, 1900.
And then what? The 25 or so?
Oh no, I think the brass era ended. Model T Ford's 1916 was Henry Ford's last effort with a brass radiator,
Okay.
and he hung on with a brass radiator longer than most people did.
Oh, really?
So I think you could say that sort of was popular in 1910, 11, 12, and then kind of, and not much after it's expensive. See,
Yeah.
so they built out of tin or iron
Yeah.
after World War I. I don't know whether you and I will want to listen to that thing. Probably do a little censoring sometime.
No. Tom's going to do that with his secretary.
Now
I'm doing her
here's
job right now.
here's our last great effort, and if you pull that, isn't there a cardboard thing there?
Right here.
This car was actually buried in the ground, and there are the pictures of it in its grave. And believe it or not, it was given to me. About 2 or 3 or 4 collectors tried to restore it and then gave up on it. And maybe we should have, but anyway, I've had it for 50 years, and we just did a little bit here and a little bit there. We parked it in the corner here, and then we just wait till we could find out somebody that we needed to help us, like the radiator. And believe it or not, that radiator core was made in New Zealand. And those Kiwis are wonderful people. they got nothing. They got grass and sheep, period. And then after that, they make it. And they made a machine like that to take the little pieces of copper tubing and swedge them square. And then they had a solder bath, and they assembled the thing and made the cores. And they're still making cores for the collectors around the world.
This car was buried in Yarmouth?
It was buried in Yarmouth and Cape Cod, you bet.
And you recovered it in 1942. It was
About then, the founder of the Sports Car Club of America, SCCA, Ted Robertson, exhumed it.
Yeah, there's a picture of him right here.
Who owned it, Dave, in his
Oh,
first couple of years?
A wonderful woman named Agassiz. And she and her husband went to Italy on a honeymoon, bought it there, brought it home like that, and used it for years. And then he died, and she dug a hole to bury him and dug a hole for the car next to him. And then you know what she did? Took the car and dumped it in upside down. And all the oil ran into the upper end of the engine, which is just exactly where you wanted it to be. So the engine was a amazingly good condition.
Hey, Dave, Brent, where are you?
Would you hold my cane for me?
Absolutely. Look at the brass.
A T-head.
4-cylinder T-head again with make and break ignition. I wonder. See, they were all struggling to find out how what's the best way, spark plug or what have you. And the make and break is a set of points built into each cylinder. Okay, and then a little push rod that opens and closes the points. But the push rod is actuated by a lobe on the camshaft. And the lobe, and these guys in 1904, you think they were dumb? Designed that, and you have to time it from each cylinder to time it that way. And we really puzzled over that locomotive. It also has make and break. But
Did you talk to anyone in Italy to see if there was any background?
you know, Fiat is in some kind of trouble.
Always.
With have you read about that?
Yeah.
You know, General Motors owned 20% of them, and they backed out and paid them off. And anyway, Fiat is not doing well, and they wouldn't answer my inquiry. And I had a pretty good source too. I had a friend who knew one of the directors, and still. Now, anyway, the fun of doing this work, these headlights. I was British Army because I had polio as a kid. See, so the Yanks didn't want me. Then I signed on with the American Field Service and drove an ambulance in Italy. And then I signed on for Burma, and they sent me through the Mediterranean, through the Suez and I got to India. We dropped the atom bomb. So I got beyond Bombay, way down towards Madras, where we were going to go across the Indian Ocean into Rangoon, and then they dropped the second atom bomb. So there I was marooned with the least amount of priority, sitting on my ass. And man, oh man, and it was quite an experience. Anyway, they didn't know what to do with us, so we had free passes, you know, and one friend went hell and gone all over India, and I stayed put and wandered around and got to know the Dodge and Plymouth dealer in Secunderabad. Can you believe it or not? There was a Dodge and Plymouth dealer. Educated Indians too. Gee, they were interesting and nice people. And amongst other things, they were Parsis. Anybody know what that is? Well, that's their religion. And they believe that that they go to their heaven by putting their dead up on a tower like that, and then they watch the vultures come and pick them apart. See, who said your religion is the only way? Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah.
And they were very, very nice people, and they had these headlights in the showroom just as a come on, you know. And they're just exactly right for this car. They're French, and have a matching carbide generator, which I haven't, you know, like a miner's light. But they fit this car perfectly because they're old in design, but they were brand new, and they still are.
Yeah.
So you got those in India when you were in the
Got them in India and shipped them home Army baggage,
And you finally
and they
found a
came
place
through.
to put them.
What?
You finally found a car to put
You
them
bet. Hung them up in the basement until we drove the car out. That's the truth, too.
Dave, were you in Germany at all during the war?
No, Italy only.
Did you ever see any collector cars in in the European campaign, or?
No, I didn't see any then.
Okay.
War spoils.
They were all hidden, you know, and nobody surfed at all till a little after the war.
Okay.
Now, I tell you what, I'll run this thing for you. Will somebody get me that fire extinguisher off the wall there? And we'll, we'd like to hear it run. Sort of, I'm gonna need a little. You know, restoring the car buffs that like to restore these old cars are an interesting bunch of people. We've learned to know foreigners and from all over the hell and gone, and we're gonna.
You have to crank it.
No, we cheated. We put a starter on it.
Oh.
Will you hold that up?
Sure. Yeah, I'm sure that battery didn't come with it.
No, that battery didn't come with it. When I didn't finish telling you about the timing on for the make and break ignition. These fellows in 1904 had to have enough know-how. First of all, what you had to do, and then second, to be able to do it, to grind that cam that operates the push rod, opens and closes the points. You see. So now, let me ask you, folks, how do you handle it, the timing? How do you advance and retard it?
Adjust the gap between the cam.
Well, you're getting close. They grind the cam. Mind you this. Now, this is 1904. They grind the cam on a little angle like this, see? And the same way on the next one. And then you shift the whole camshaft with the washers up on the front end. Isn't that something? I tell you, we now who's got the fire extinguisher? Would you put your camera down and use it? You know what? I'm tickling the carburetor. I don't know whether that's tickled enough now or. I want you to see it. I want you to see this because with my back, you see that self-starter is legitimate cheating. Now you gotta come over here. Over here on this side. Over here. Look at the oiling system. That's how you oil the front and rear main bearing. No kidding.
Over here, Dave.
Down there. The oil. You're going to get this and see that. That's all good enough for camshaft. It's all right. Everybody get that. Next spring. There.
Is this wood? This steering wheel?
Do you know?
I don't know. It was made for it by a fellow in I can't answer that for you. I think it's wood. Mike Kane?
Here, right here.
Thanks.
Where was the guy from that made it?
Oh, Kankakee, his name is Hensel, Dave Hensel. He
Kankakee, Iowa?
Illinois.
Illinois.
And he, if you really want to know, I can give you his name. He does quite a bit of work on ignition systems for antique cars. The wheels were made by the Amish people in Pennsylvania. They're they're tremendous carpenters. Oh, our wounds are open then. Now, what's interesting, I think, by comparison, next to it is a 1905 Pierce Arrow. The earliest four-cylinder Pierce that we know of, identified by the Pierce Arrow Society, and totally original, and we never had to do anything to it, clean it up and make sure that the fuel lines were clean. And interesting comparison because this car was a tremendous job to restore it, and here all we had to do was polish it. I tell you, interestingly, how you meet friends and how you get lucky. Somehow I heard of, I don't even remember how I heard of it, another one of these cars, and a Boeing engineer in Seattle has the identical car, and he let us copy the body because his was all intact, and that's how we made the body. Not that much to it except his rear entrance, which is typically 1905. Even Oldsmobile, I think, made a rear entrance in 1904, and then they got away from it in 1905. That's just a radiator builder.
How long have you owned this car?
Since 1958. We'll do it together. Yeah. That's a Hispano. 6.5 liter overhead cam. One of the things that's always intrigued me was the really great engineers, and the engineer on this Hispano was a Swiss named Burkett, and he designed the V8 Hispano engines that were used in a Spad fighter plane in 1915, and then he designed this engine in this car in 1919, and ran it for about 10 years, and it's just a tremendous running car. Cruises at 70, and has a booster, mechanical booster brake. Rolls-Royce paid him a royalty till 1965.
Where were these cars built?
Well, they were built partly in Spain and then in Paris,
Okay.
in France.
Yeah.
Didn't they also make race cars? Hispano race cars?
Very early they did. Very early they made a.
Alfonso, I think they were.
Yes. Exactly. But they were very well conceived. It was
Now this is a head cast in block, so that the head is not separable. Is that correct?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah, that's all uniform.
Dave, is this
Just
car
like
pretty
the
much the
office.
way you bought it? And
Pardon me?
Is this car pretty much the way you bought it and restored it? Is it pretty?
Well, it was all together, and it ran. But we've done mostly cosmetic work, I guess you'd say, to it.
What year is it?
1926.
And it has the St. Christopher medal on the dash also?
Sure, you bet. You like that. Maybe they'll take good care of me. Well, we'll go on a little bit. Here are a couple of Bugattis.
Aren't they wonderful?
The little four-cylinder Bugatti is kind of interesting. It's a pretty good example of getting away from the great big Mercer type of big clumsy four-cylinder engine into a small. Thank you. Into a small high-speed engine. We'll just let it out. So he did this in 1921. And took it to Brescia, Italy, and won the race there, and that catapulted him into fame. And then they called the model Brescia. This particular engine this very same engine was bought by Caruso, who was an Italiano from New York, and he put it in his midget and was very successful with it in the East, and then kept pouring it out to get more displacement, and went into the water jacket, and then he took it and put it all aside in his junkyard, and we found the engine years later, made a sleeve for it, and you can see where he cut it off to get into the narrow frame of his midget. We just made little castings and welded them back on to finish the motor mounts.
What is this driving?
That's the Magneto.
Oh,
Pardon me, generator.
It's the generator.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this engine is original to this car?
Yes, original for this car. Can you believe it? I mean, once in a while you get lucky.
Yeah, I guess.
Dumb lucky. And because I owned it with another friend, and I thought, what the hell, we'll put a nice little Opel engine in it or something like that, or a little MG engine, and then he said, no, let's keep trying to find it. So we finally found this discarded in his junkyard.
Boy, now that's lucky.
That's lucky. And what I got to tell you is a very prominent German collector looked at it, and I said, well, I'll just get my file and rasp those weld beads down, and you will never know it. And he said, oh no, Dave, leave a few battle scars.
The story's better than the original engine. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Is it all cats?
Now you can't pass up a beloved Model A's. But that little Phaeton has been all the way around France, all the way along the Mediterranean, to Genoa, the ferry to Mallorca. I said, my who? Those islands in the Mediterranean. And then from Barcelona to Le Havre, France, to get back on the boat. This was the first Monte Carlo rally, 1974. Interesting. That restoration was done in '73, and then it's been, exposed to the elements and what have you.
Who did the paintwork, Dave?
Milt Colden at Clintonville, Wisconsin. No longer alive, deceased. I just mentioned it because he did such a nice job, and held up so well. And they keep telling me that, the materials were so much better. Allowed to use lead and whatnot.
If you compare this front axle to the hot rod over there, you can see how that one's rough.
Dayton, Ohio, had to be or still is a heck of a town producing the Wright people. The Wright brothers had their bicycle shop in Dayton, and designed their airplane there. And then this car called a Speedwell was built in Dayton. And here we go with the engineering. These fellows knew ahead of everybody else that a short stroke engine was the way to go. So it's a square engine in 1910, 5-inch bore, 5-inch stroke. And I mean, it's a goer. Believe me. And I had two mother-in-laws, so that's why it's a double mother-in-law seat in the back.
Was this car ever raced?
No.
No?
No. Then the other great firm of Dayton was Stoddard Dayton, and they raced those in the early days quite successfully. These people went to a rotary valve for what reason I don't know, and never could make any success out of it, and caused them to go broke. Back 50 years ago, we did some racing, sports car club racing, FCCA, and the 1500cc class, liter and a half, always interested me. It was a highly competitive class, and there were people that could, in this country, build some very, very successful chassis and body chassis, handling well, but nobody had an engine, and it always interested me why nobody ever took the little Offie midget engine and tried to make a good Who knows why? So I said, why? Let's take a try at providing an engine for it. So we designed and built this overhead cam engine for the MG block, and finally we after agonizing problems of gasoline flooding and going all over the driver, you can't do that. You got to stop. You can't stop quick enough. I'm digressing a little bit now, but that's really interesting because Carl Marchese said, "Oh, the hell with this, those English carburetors." See, what we were trying to do was keep as much of the MG stuff as we could, the water pump, the distributor, the carburetors, and provide a cylinder head for the MG owner. And anyway, what do you suppose? We tried. We didn't have a dyno, and Carl said, "Oh, those damn English carburetors are no good. We'll put my Winfields on it." So we did. And then at 5,800 RPM, there was gas all over everything again. Well, we were, getting pretty desperate, and we finally got the engine on a dyno in a floor dyno in the. I think it was a Chrysler dealer, Dennis Otis, and at 5,800 RPM, why would we even go that high? We tried it to first, second, third, and no problem. But then there was a midget driver. He said, "Why don't you try it in fourth gear?" Somebody said, "Why don't you mind your own, business?" And so we said, "Well, we're here. We should try it." So we tried it in fourth gear. This is after a year and a half of struggling with this thing, and gas all over everything. We didn't know if it was dynamics or what. Guess what? What do you call it? I can't find the word. No, it was harmonics. Yeah, there we go. Harmonics lifted the floats no matter how much pressure you put on them. So then we rubber dampened the carburetors. They're all rubber dampened. then we went to town. Then we won races with it.
What year did you build this, Dave?
53 and 54.
Did you race at Elkhart Lake at all?
No, but we won the race at the first sports car race at State Fair Park, where they used the center of the mile track to make a road course out of it.
You ran it.
Race at Middledale or?
No,
they weren't tracks weren't
At
existing.
Wilmot, we did earlier the year before.
You
Fred Wacker.
Did Carl Brocken drive this?
He sure did.
Yes, I remember Carl Brocken.
Carl Brocken.
Driving at Janesville, I think he drove it, right? At
Yes.
Janesville Airport.
Carl Brocken was a very, very wonderful man, and wonderful to work with our troubles, and a very accomplished driver. Both of them were.
How many years was the campaign?
2 years, just 2 years. But we're going to campaign it this summer. Hopefully, yeah. Village racing.
Great.
And,
Dave just reminded me of when I met Dave, because I was working at Wisconsin Auto Sales in the basement on 7th and Wisconsin. There was an import car dealership, and Dave came down with a fuel pump in a rag for this car. And he was in the basement in 1952. I was 18 years old at the time, and that's when I met Dave. I remember he had a Mackinaw shirt on and an old fishing hat, and he
like
walked,
this one.
yeah, he walked up the air in a rag with this SU fuel pump, and I put it in the vise and tightened it up. I counted all the rollers and I adjusted, and he was so amazed how the points got adjusted on that SU fuel pump.
Yeah.
He was just amazed because you had to spin the diaphragm around to do it because you couldn't adjust the points any other way. And Carl, of course, Carl Marchese, he was totally puzzled by how you did that.
Sure.
That's how Dave and I met the first time in 1953, way back then.
Long time ago.
Because of this car.
Then the Sports Car Club of America said no more cycle fenders. And there were a couple other reasons that, so we hung it up, which was too bad. We never really proved it. And
Who built the chassis?
Ilario Bandini,
Really?
It's Italian.
It's a Bandini chassis.
Bandini chassis.
Oh wow.
We built the first one using a TDMG block, a frame, and 400 pounds too heavy. And Bandini, a very clever Italiano, at Forlì, Italy. And he started building chassis for using the Crosley engine, which is only 750 cc's. And then we heard about him and bought this. Was a very successful chassis.
The body work is his body work?
His body work, everything except the engine. And
If you would have waited until 1959, you could have put the MGA twin cam engine.
yes, sir.
Did you ever market
we
that
think
head?
ours is better.
Dave, did you ever sell that head to any other racers? Or
No.
This is the only one.
The only one.
Do you have the patterns for the head?
Yes. Yeah. Hope so. I wouldn't say that some bits and pieces might have gotten lost, though.
You could have it cast together.
Yes, sir. I have a couple of heads. We made a couple of extra head castings.
Did you?
No,
They're not machined. They're not machined.
no, not machine. The brothers, the Marchesi brothers, machined that whole engine.
Oh, they did.
Oh, you bet. Did a beautiful job of it too.
Whose headers and exhaust? The Marchesi headers and exhaust, everything?
Yes, yeah.
You're going to run this next year in
Yes,
vintage?
try to.
What group are you going to run with? You know? Or
Don't know yet.
Oh.
I don't know much about him. It's a fellow's name is Warley, and they're in South Carolina. I was asking for the rules and specifications. We're going to put a fuel cell in it, for instance, and we're going to do every precaution that we can, and
A roll,
a roll bar,
Yeah.
ugly as they are, but
Yeah. Yeah, you have to.
safe. Pardon me?
SVRA, that's the world.
Is it?
Would you say that again, please?
SVRA, Sports Car Vintage Racing Association.
SVRA.
Yeah, that's
Where
Worley's.
are they located?
They're out east there somewhere. Yeah. They're out east. Yeah.
Dave runs SVRA. Maybe you can connect
Yeah, I
with
do.
that.
Well, you'd be better off with VSCDA here in
Yeah.
Wisconsin.
Yeah, they are.
Because
They're
you
out of
wouldn't even
Michigan.
need, you might not need a roll bar
Well, you want a
or
roll
a cell. No, because he'd be running in my group.
Well, I know a lot of them running without it, but I just
But here in Wisconsin, VSCDA, there's 2 races a year you could run this car at. One at Black Hawk Farms in Rock in Beloit,
Sure.
and one at Elkhart Lake.
Elkhart Lake is right after our Muir meet, I think.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's the fall meet.
Middle of July, about it.
It's either right
Well, that
after
one you
or
wouldn't
after
be
the same day, the same weekend.
You wouldn't be in that one. You'd be the one in fall, September.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Which SVRA is going to run this year. SVRA
I'm
runs that
so
race
out of
this year.
touch with it.
Hold on, wait. I'm thinking of the brick. SVRA is running.
Excuse me, but say your name again.
Dale Schmidt.
That's a good Irish name.
Yeah, right.
Monza Alpha.
What year?
32, about
33.
33.
It says 33 on this.
When did you buy that car, Dave?
This,
Yeah.
we built it.
You built it.
I bought the engine in 1947. From a radio announcer in Florida. There was he ran an ad for the HC 2300 Roadster, the touring Roadster. Briggs Cunningham beat me to it by 1 day. And the fellow said to me, "Why don't you buy my other one?" I said, "You're what?" And he had this engine spread all over everything in the backyard in Florida. And I bought the engine from him. And never lost any pieces. Went through a divorce and didn't lose any pieces. and then we had the transmission. He had that too. So I bought the engine and transmission from him.
They're really big on cooling, running fins on
Oh,
everything
sure.
to dissipate heat, eh?
That's here we go again with a great designers. Yano was the designer, and I hold him in high esteem. You're smiling.
Wow.
He also built the P3 racing cars.
Oh, really?
Designed them.
He was big on wiring and everything, wasn't he? Yeah.
Fastest pre-World War II Indy car ever. That's Art Sparks' Big Six. The Big Six. Then they changed the formula, in 1938. Went to 3 liters with a supercharger and 4.5 without. You Indy followers remember that? Jimmy Schneider broke the track record in 1937. You're hanging on a fire.
I'm gonna, nothing's gonna start on fire around me. It's an early Hillborn fuel injection.
Oh yes, then this is the way it ran in its final form. Put Caracciolo in it right after the war, and he hung it on the wall. The great German driver, kind of a bird flew in his face. And almost killed him. And then we restored it in its final form. Joel Thorne drove it a lot himself. And I tell you what, he was very, sort of an odd fellow. And but by God, he drove with the big boys right up front with him too.
Where was this built? Where was it manufactured? Where is it?
Well, they built it in California.
California.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's magnesium too.
Wow.
And the Leo Goosen moonlighted for him and helped.
Oh, is this a
Which he
Miller
didn't-
engine? Is this a Miller? The engine?
No, this is Art Sparks.
Oh, okay.
Thorne Sparks. But they got help from Goosen. And if you know your off the engine, the block, Miller was that way for years. The head and the block are one, and they bolt the block to the crankcase. Yes, and you know what? They jacked the compression up so high on those engines that they couldn't hold it with the studs.
Couldn't hold the block on
And
the case.
Muriel Ballinger came here with that little car, and he had about a 3-inch wide metal strap going all the way around the engine like this with a turnbuckle on it. Believe me. And I can tell you, the worst thing I ever did was I didn't take a picture of it then and there. And that's how hard they tried to hold that block onto the case. It was engineered wrong with just little bolts all the way along. So when Spark went at this thing, he got a hold of the great Miller designer, Leo Goosen, and you should see it. They ran big studs all the way down through to the crankcase and tied the whole thing together that way.
What is the displacement on this engine?
This is a 270.
270 cubic.
270, 4.5 liters.
Okay.
This is, see, we went to the International Grand Prix Formula in 1938.
Which at that time was, what, 1500 cc?
No, it was 3,000.
Okay, 3 liters.
Oh, with a supercharger.
Yeah.
3 liters with a supercharger, or 183 cubic inches, or 270 with no blower,
Naturally aspirated.
like the Marchese's Indianapolis car over.
Yeah.
You shoot those questions at me like that because it's confusing. It's all get out, you know. It's a change from.
Yeah. The rules changing.
Sure. And Alpha's Nuvolari's practice car was 3.8 liters. So they had to de-stroke it. And they got it down to 3 liters. Duke Nayland drove it here at Alpha and hooked the guardrail on the backstretch. You remember that? Wiped out about 20 fence posts and didn't hurt himself. 20 fence posts and didn't hurt himself. Originally, see, it was born in the 30s. Originally, it was a 2-man car.
So it was rebodied then for the single driver lane?
Yes.
You look at that car, and then you look at the ones that are, it's unbelievable.
Fine.
The difference.
Any questions or anything you want to see otherwise, or any
Question for you. Why was the racetrack built in Indianapolis? Why was it Indianapolis?
That's a good question. I just was reading about that the other day. A number of automobile manufacturers started in Indianapolis, and there never was the same impetus that Detroit had. So anyway, because there were a number of these cars, they thought that was a good place to have a racetrack. And this fellow, Carl Fisher, who you read about his name all the time, was one of the guys that went out to raise the money to build the track, and it ended up there. Isn't a very good explanation, but I don't think there's a better one.
Yeah. Indiana had a lot of car builders.
They had a lot of car builders, you bet. And well, National was the other big rival, the Mercer Stutz National, and also the what am I trying to say? The Dayton. Stoddard Dayton. If you ever get to see one of those engines, you'll absolutely marvel at it. They knew that the hemispherical combustion chamber was the best, and they could get the bigger valves in. You know, that's the reason for it. Did you know that? And so, if you ever see a Stoddard Dayton, they operated the valves not with a overhead camshaft. The overhead the cams were still in the base of the engine, but with push rods. It's a nightmare of push rods. It's a beautiful thing, and they work.
Do all these cars run, Dave? Can you run all?
Pretty near all of them, yes. You bet. These now we got the Millers, the three Millers here. These 4 have been at the Milwaukee Mile every summer for at least the last 8 or 9 years. This is remarkable to me because this is Leo Goosen at his greatest. That's the front drive unit. They tell me that the modern day front drives are pretty much copied from this. In 17 inches from here to here, he's got a 3-speed transmission with reverse. He's got the ring gear and pinion that drives it, and he's got the differential over here. The guy was
Very clever.
he was just brilliant.
Yeah.
Anyway, I run this car every year, and it's just a smooth piece of machinery, believe me. This is basically the. See, it was a 122 Miller. There we are. Thank you. I think that's a real work of art. Thanks. Yep, you're welcome.
Is that the supercharger at the back?
That's a supercharger. And this is a 122 Miller, but it's Marchese's engine, the one that they ran for years, and
They just
Cup.
cut those in half and run half in the midget.
sure, exactly.
Yeah.
And then that was only see half of 122 is 61 cubic inches.
Yeah. So it still was a little small.
It's a little small. So Corrigan in Rockford, Illinois, patterned so they could make the same block but bigger, and they got up to 90 inches, I think. And I saw Corrigan the other day, a while back, and he said, "We still have the patterns."
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Dave, I was on the internet on the Miller websites, and I can see where it said Harry Miller took mechanical engineering and race car engineering and took it to an art form that when his cars sat on the track, they were not only fast, but they were the most beautiful. And when I see some of the style lines and that tank being blended in the way it is, it's totally to a whole nother level. I almost compare him in a way to Penske of today, Roger Penske.
Sure. That's absolutely true. I asked Goosen. I had the fun of interviewing him in 1974 with Cunningham and Alec Ullman, and they took me along because I had this exposure with the Marchese brothers. And so I asked Goosen a couple of questions, and he said, "Mr. Miller," mind you, 82 years old and still addressing Harry Miller as Mr. Mr. Miller never bawled me out if something broke, but he said that I'd catch hell if it was heavy and clumsy. Isn't that marvelous? That's a direct quotation, and that's where their Miller was a big advocate of having something look right, look beautiful.
Now, Bugatti, it's been documented, Bugatti actually assumed some of his lines and some of Miller's designs.
Copied his valve gear.
I didn't want to say copy.
Copied the valve gear, sure.
For his twin cam.
You know who put me onto this? Oh, I went to a Bugatti meet with my wife, and we had clutch trouble. And so I'm struggling with a thing like this, and all of a sudden there's a big, tall fellow, and he said, "You having trouble, son?" I was a little younger than old Dave. I said, "Yeah, sure." He said, "Well, give me those tools. I'll help you." He was dressed in a suit and everything. So I had a lot here, and it was Hugh Conway, chairman of the board of Rolls-Royce Jet Engine, which I didn't know at the time. Wonderful, absolutely brilliant individual, written a lot of books on Bugatti. On top of anything else, he's a Bugatti nut. And he looked at me and he said, "Where do you come from?" I said, you probably hardly know it, Wisconsin. And he said, "Know it." He said, "Why don't you fellas do more about Harry Miller?" And that stimulated me to come home and start the Miller Club. And this fellow tied into me then about how great Miller was, so that and admitted that Bugatti copied Miller's valve gear and design.
He had elfin brakes on louvered brakes on the race cars way back in the 20s too, eh?
Yes.
Wow.
Is that aluminum or cast iron? Can't tell.
Well, I can't tell you that. I think it's cast iron with maybe or aluminum with a shoe in it. You know. They were whatever you could do to make it light.
Yeah.
How successful was this car as far as a race car?
Oh, it never won the Indy, and they won a lot of board track races with it. You bet.
They did.
It was successful.
That front wheel drive had to be very radical for that time.
Sure.
That engine's beautiful, isn't it?
You know the history of this car. Our great American driver. Come on, help me with the fellow that won the French Grand Prix with the Duesenberg in 1921. No, big competitor of Tommy Milton at the time, and never got killed at Syracuse too. Sorry, my memory is I get.
Doing very well, Dave.
Thanks. Well,
21 gets a little bit back there.
yeah.
1921.
This is the actual Indy winner. They all admit it now, of 1931. Oh, this is the the junk formula days where they allowed Studebakers and Hudsons and Auburns and what else to run. We ran a lot of stock cars. Well, some of you fellas here, I'm 85, and I can remember the Depression real well. I remember my father saying, "You eat what's set in front of you." Boy, it was so we had the as they call it, the junk formula, and they no more supercharging. They had a 37-gallon gas limit, and most of the equipment that ran well was some version of the Millers of the 20s. Good. But this is another version of the 122 Miller. Poured out to 151 cubic inches, and 4 Winfield carburetors, and a 2-man car.
Another fuel pump.
Yes, sir. Help along. I had the real fun. You won't believe me, but I believe me, it's the truth. At age 15, I was invited to go to California by some friends, and for the summer, and I said fine, and I knew about Winfield. Then I was 15 years old, and I went to come on Pasadena. Can't I go over there? And I bought a carburetor from the Winfield brothers for my Model A, the manifold and the right carburetor.
Yeah.
I still got them.
That's great.
They were more self-made, brilliant people. Bud and Ed Winfield.
With your wrench experience, then, did you work on most of these cars yourself? You do?
Well, I did a lot, but yes.
That's great.
I don't know how competent I was, but I tried to do everything that I could do.
Sure.
And when I could find out somebody do something better, I fine.
Dave, I haven't seen any midgets. Is there some reason there are no midgets?
Yes. Yeah. One of those good Dagos in the Marchese family talked me out of it.
Oh, really?
I had the last one they ever built,
Oh.
and Dave Salveggio has it, and he's a good friend, and he lives here in Cedarburg, but he has the last midget that they built, and I tell you what, I have the engine because you got to go and look at it. It's right over there.
Is that an offie?
No, this is a Marchese engine.
Oh.
I mean, this is truly entirely a Marchese engine.
We got one more here, Dave, before we go over there. Why don't we look at this one, and then we'll go over
Oh, all right. Here, this is a very, very original Miller, 122 Miller. This was Tommy Milton's straightaway car, and he set the world's record at Muroc Dry Lake, 144 miles an hour. You know, people always ask you, how fast did that car go? See, well, how can you tell when it's running on a track? You know, but this was a straightaway car, and he had another car identical to it that he won Indy with the same year, 1923.
Super skinny tires, eh, Dave?
Pardon me?
Super skinny tires.
Super skinny tires. And to tell you what good experience, what good exposure I had. Carl Marchese, you didn't fool him, and I told him it was Milton's straightaway car, and he said, favorite word was, oh, bullshit. And he came up here and looked at it like this, and he just stood here for a second like that, and he went like that. And he looked up at me and he said, I'll believe you. Never was the front axle was never drilled for the cable for four-wheel brakes. So this car, a straightaway car, never those brakes were put on it when they ran it on the dirt. They don't even belong. The only brake is a differential brake on the drive shaft. And I said, gee, we can't do that. Isn't very, very good. So that's why we went and put the brakes on it. But Carl knew that from his great experience. And as soon as he felt that it had never been built for four-wheel brakes, he said, all right, I'll believe you.
Dave, in your recollection, the Marchese brothers and Miller, in your recollection, were they recognized nationally as the edge, the height of development, engineering, or was it so many people out there doing so many things?
In all, to my recollection is that people were race fans, but they weren't interested in technically like they are today. So I think that's the answer to your question.
Yeah, right.
I think we should raise the hood here because there we go. This is a better view of the 122 Miller. Not ongoing. I can't, for the life of me, I can't think of the name of the driver that.
Got you stuck on. Are those gear-driven camshafts or chain-driven camshafts?
Gear driven, see? It's a
Right.
gear tower.
Right up here?
Yes, you
And
bet.
then it splits it off.
And a lot of people use the gears, and then part of it with chains, and the very best way was a straight gear tower
With shaft. Or with gears.
with gears, one gear on top of the other.
Now the Bugattis used a shaft up there and then had bevel gears up on top.
Oh, you're talking earlier. No, Duesenberg. I don't think Bugatti
Oh,
ever did.
okay.
Duesenberg
Maybe
used a
you're
bevel drive
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Crosley did too,
Crosley did on
on the little engines.
the little engine.
Really?
Okay. I'm not.
They had a
I'm
single
not.
cam.
I'm not much. Yeah, single cam.
Yeah.
I'm not very knowledgeable on Crosley's engines.
There was
Except
a
I know
guy-
that they had overhead camshaft and they had cups, inverted cups.
There was a guy in Indiana that built a dual overhead cam head for Crosley.
For Crosley.
Yeah, it was very nice.
Dave, how were these manifolds and this alloy work? How was it? Was it cast individually, and how long did it take to do an engine like this, to build up an engine like this? These are individual castings, or they do them in series?
Sure, no, they're individual castings. That answer your question?
Yeah.
That's one. That's the other one.
Right.
Oh,
How long to manufacture and build up an engine like this?
well, they claim that they built those Novi engines in 3 months. That they just threw caution to the winds and just went at it. I don't know.
In talking with Joe Kaufman, he claims that these can't be made anymore because mainly the craftsmen who could do the castings, that all of that knowledge is lost. In other words, everything is so mechanized now that the handwork that they require to make a, for instance, that manifold, those craftsmen are no longer around.
Oh, I question that. I mean, some of the work on these exotic engines today is absolutely beautiful. So,
But to get a foundry that they're working now on doing the J head for the Duesenberg
yes,
and intake and a head, and they've had 20 castings made and haven't had a good one yet because of the people that are,
Joe would know this, see, because they don't know how to.
yeah, they don't know how to do it anymore.
Are they
Well-
here, is this guy here local?
I can only tell you this, that Duesenberg over there, in the Indy Winter 122 Duesenberg, was missing the cylinder head.
Minor item.
I mean, like that. All we had was the tower, which is a full gear tower, and the block. And a very, very brilliant and competent guy and a wonderful friend of mine, E.J. Healy. Jack Healy was a turbine designer at Alice Chalmers. And for fun, he built midgets. And he and 5 other guys got together and copied the little Offie engine. They said, we aren't going to pay those fancy prices, so we'll build our own. And they did.
Okay.
And so in those days, they made some, this is 50 years ago, I guess. They did some beautiful work, and I think today there are some places that make some beautiful castings.
You can find the right place, I guess. Huh?
Uh,
They've had a lot of trouble with the head casting.
Sure, I believe it. Has he ever solved it?
They haven't made a good one yet.
Well, it's anyway. I know what I was going to tell you. This casting we had made. I told you about Conway, and asking why we didn't do something about Harry Miller.
Right.
And he did this. He followed through on that drawing that we made some kind of of a drawing this fellow Healy did of the cylinder head, and Hugh Conway took it to a pattern maker over there, and we got a casting off the thing. And what does Conway do but up and die on us? Right in the middle of the project. And so my gunmaker friend in England said, well, there's a pretty good foundry up here in Birmingham. And I went there, and here was Alan Brett, a little Englishman like that. And, you know, I've been down those roads. Yeah, I can do it, and all kinds of people say. And he said, well, I think I can make you a casting. And so he said, would you like to see the foundry? And I said, sure. So out in the foundry, and here's a whole line of cores, and then another whole line of cores. Oh, he said, those are from Aston Martin. He said, those are for Rolls Royce. I thought, geez, maybe I am in the right place. And then he said, would you like to see where we test these castings? I said, sure. So he took me to this place here, and he said, now, where did you tell me you come from? And I said, well, it's a medium-sized city in America called Milwaukee, and it's about 100 miles north of Chicago. Oh, he said, yeah, I know it. I've been there. I said, yeah. And he said, sure. He said, don't you know? He said, I make the castings for Harley Davidson and for Outboard Marine. I said, I'm in the right place. And this, I mean, he deserved almost more credit than Conway. He took our drawings and played with the CAD CAM. Now you ask what I do. Now we're way over my head. See? And solved the pattern problem and made the casting. And my hunting buddy put it in his duffel, brought it home, and we machined it perfect.
First try. Amazing.
Perfect. So I mean, give them credit. Those limeys got a lot of know-how. You get mad at me for calling them that, but
Well, I'll ask Joe about that.
you know where that comes from?
No.
You don't?
No, sir.
Ah, you young Turks, gee. Scurvy, sure he
Yeah.
knows.
Yeah.
See,
Oh, yeah.
when they came across the ocean like that, they'd get scurvy inside,
Yeah.
and they all sucked on the line, and that's for them. And they don't like to be called that or reminded of it. They should be proud of it, I think. Anyway, put a nickel in me, jeez. Let's go look at that. Here's that Marchese's. That's about it then. Here's Marchese's. Yes.
Is it four-cylinder?
Sure.
Gosh, that's beautiful.
This is their own engine.
Now, how many horsepower would this be good for?
I'll tell you what, you'd just be guessing.
What was
I would think, pardon me,
what was the displacement?
64 cubic inches. See, that was the formula, the rules then. If you supercharge a midget, I think 110 is a limit for overhead cam. That's where this fellow Heddles put him out of business with his Sesco engine, see, with a 283 Chevy head, and his own block.
Yeah. Gosh, this is a work of art, isn't it?
And they turn the thing, they turn them, those Chevys as 7,500. Instead of a Chevy 2 rod brakes at 76.
That's right where they go.
That's called a Sesco engine.
Yes, that's a Sesco engine. But they let them run 145 cubic inches, see. As soon as the rocker arm, because they limit the overhead cam.
Yeah.
But what happened here was, you see, is it coming out of, they didn't have a wastegate. They didn't know about a wastegate. They hadn't invented it by then.
This little deal here.
You know, to keep the engine turning. another one of those things that's never been fully tested. Never.
What year is this engine? How old is this?
47. They finished it right after the war. And they made Carl always talked about Miller dimensions, and I finally smarted up to it. What he meant by Miller dimensions was that they use the gear tower. There's a gear tower, and they use this dimension from here up to here. He thought was so ideal, and
that set up the whole relationship between
Sure.
the cylinder head, the block,
Exactly,
and the angle of
exactly.
the cams and all that. Yeah.
everything was designed around that afterward.
Were those spur gears?
Now you want to, pardon me?
Were they spur gears? The
Yes,
gears?
sir.
And they wouldn't be real noisy or at those speeds?
Who cares?
Good point. Sure, they're not. The exhaust was as loud as it was.
There were other noises that
Covered it up.
drowned it out.
The other supercharged Miller car that you have back there, the carburetor actually resides inside where the driver is then.
Yes.
This is the carburetor, and it draws right into the supercharger.
Sure.
So he's hearing the howl of the air going in along with everything else.
True story. Have you fellas heard of Buster Wark? He was a prominent dirt track driver, and he drove relief at Indy a lot. But he comes from Pennsylvania. He's a typical Pennsylvania Dutchman. See? And he did some engine work for me several years ago, and we were going to honor him this last year at our Miller meet, and then he got sick the last minute and couldn't come. Anyway, he's quite elderly. He must be almost 90 now, and this was a four-cylinder Offie, you see, and he said, "You didn't send me the magneto," and I said, "Yeah, well, here it is. It's coming." And he called me up and he said, "What have you been drinking?" I said, "Why?" He said, "You sent me an 8-cylinder magneto for a 4-cylinder engine." No, I didn't. I said, I sent you what is a 4-cylinder magneto for that engine. No, Dave, no. And I said, well, after you see what the Marchese brothers did, they took the Bosch magneto and doubled up on the firing rotors here, and ran the engine half speed. Ran the magneto half speed. See? And of course that's where they had the trouble with these magnetos when they were running such damn high speed. So here they never had any magneto trouble because they were running 3,500 RPM instead of 7,000. Buster worked it.
Offie had the magneto at right angles off a drive.
Yes,
on the
yeah.
front.
But still, whatever this way with an 8-cylinder mag, you could run it at half speed. Buster works it. Those smart dagos. and they were clever that way, kind of a little gimmickry.
Hey, Dave, I just want to say, on behalf of the Wisconsin 356 Club, this is the $100 tour we got today, and we never really expected it. You're an extremely generous guy that's really extended and expanded our knowledge, and certainly left you're making a major mark in Wisconsin and Wisconsin racing. These guys may or may not realize Dave's real big show is in July at the Milwaukee Mile, the Miller Days, and is that like July 8th or 9th?
Yes,
typically?
it's right in there, right the weekend right after the 4th.
We'll be well represented, and this and far more cars.
Well, if you
from all
have
around the
time, you'd
nation.
enjoy it. I tell you, it's some beautiful machinery comes.
We'd like to give you a small thing in our appreciation, a sweatshirt, club sweatshirt.
Hey,
And when
that I'll use.
when you're wrenching on one of these cars and oil drips on you, it blends right in.
Thank you. Not that one. It's going to get tender, loving care.
I'd like these guys as we
Thank you
leave.
very much.
I'd like
Thank you.
these guys as they leave to introduce themselves and shake your hand and just tell you where they're from. We got people from all around the
Fine.
state.
Fine.
And we're going to go over and have a beer and a sandwich if you can join us over at the Hamilton at Denise's place. We're going to go get a
right on the corner.
Yeah.
Sure.
Can you join us?
Sure. I'll
Okay.
come and have a beer with you anyway.
This guy's Charlie Presta from Racine.
Charlie
Hi. Charlie Presta.
Presta.
Yeah.
Good.
Great
Fine,
scene.
Charlie.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for the show.